Well, hello, my name is Matt. I'm one of the pastors here at Village Church, and thank you for joining us for our daily reflection series that we're doing through Holy Week. This year, obviously, for Holy Week is looking a little different with the COVID-19 virus. Typically, we would be meeting together a lot during this week as we are preparing for Easter together to celebrate this upcoming Sunday. But in light of the virus, since we're not able to meet together, we instead this year are doing this daily series where each day throughout Holy Week of this upcoming week, we're going to have a daily devotion for you that someone from our church is going to be putting together and just sharing Jesus' events throughout Holy Week. And so what we're doing is really cool. We're looking at the chronological events of Holy Week. And so today we're going to be looking at an event that happened on Monday of Holy Week. Tomorrow we'll look at Tuesday and so on. And we're really going to be following Jesus as he moves on to the cross and beyond. And so again, today's Monday of Holy Week, so we're going to be looking at some of those first events that happened right after Jesus enters Jerusalem. And for context, on Sunday, which was yesterday, it was interesting. Jesus, he comes and it's on Palm Sunday, and so the crowds are literally, giving him this royal entrance, the royal treatment. They're taking palm branches and they're cutting them down. They're taking their robes off and they're putting it at Jesus' feet because they are celebrating that he is entering Jerusalem. And yet we know that just 6-7 days later, he's crucified on that very Friday. And so sometimes you may wonder, how did he move from being this celebrated royalty to this villain who's crucified? And what we see in the passage we're going to look at today is just the beginning of that tension that's beginning to rise, where he's beginning to fall out of favor, kind of first with the religious establishment. And so let's jump into our passage today where right after he enters into the city on Sunday, this next Monday, he goes in and really begins to start a uproar within the city for the actions that he does. So let's kind of dive right in there. I'm going to be looking at Matthew chapter 21, verses 12 through 16. I'm reading from the Net version, but any version will do. Again, that's Matthew 21, verses 12 through 16. So verse 12 reads, "Then Jesus entered the temple area and drove out all those who were selling and buying in the temple courts, and turned over the tables of the money changers and the chairs of those selling doves. And he said to them, 'It is written, my house will be called a house of prayer, but you are turning it into a den of robbers.' The blind and the lame came to him in the temple courts, and he healed them. But when the chief priests and experts of the law saw the wonderful things he did and heard the children crying out in the temple courts, 'Hosanna to the Son of David,' they became indignant. And he said to them, 'Do you hear what they're saying?' Jesus said to them, 'Yes. Have you never read, out of the mouths of children and nursing infants, you have prepared praise for yourself?'" So, in this text, we see Jesus and the religious leaders, that both of them are indignant. And it's interesting because we're seeing both sides have an anger over events that are taking place. But the indignation of both sides, couldn't be for more vastly different reasons. So let's first kind of check out the religious leaders, the reasons for their indignation. They're in the temple, and on the outside of the temple there was this area called the Court of the Gentiles. That's where the Gentiles could go, but they couldn't actually enter into the actual temple facility where only Jews were allowed to worship during that time. And in this outer region, the Court of the Gentiles, that's where the money changers and these different businesses had set up shop. And what they were doing there is they were setting up their shop there so that as people came in to bring their sacrifices, they could exchange currencies. And before this had been, further away from the temple to kind of keep it separate. But, as time went on, just, to make business more profitable, they moved it right into the area that the Gentiles were praying in. So imagine yourself as a Gentile. This is the only place you can go to connect with God. And while you're trying to pray, you just hear all this noise of different people doing business day in and day out. Think of the New York Stock Exchange. Maybe not that crazy, but essentially the place where you're trying to worship God isn't this place of solitude, but it's right there as you're there. You're just hearing all this business and commotion and animals and everything else just happening all at once. And so Jesus, when he sees this, he's distraught. Because he's seen that it's not how it's meant to be. And so again, you have the religious leaders. They're upset with Jesus because he's messing with the status quo. Business as usual is working well for them, and it's in an order that they're used to, the status quo. And so they're mad at Jesus for upsetting the status quo. But Jesus, when we see his indignation, he is angry because this is the one place for the Gentiles to connect with God. That this is meant to be a place for people to connect with God in general, and yet it's turning into a business endeavor first and foremost. And so he is indignant. He's angry because he wants this to be a space for people to connect with his Father. And so the first reflection I want to give us for today is just to do a quick heart check. When you think of your anger, what we see in this passage is that anger or indignation are not necessarily bad things. There's nothing wrong with just having anger, because Jesus here in this passage, we see him angry at what's going on, and that he's angry at an injustice. And so the heart check I want us to do is what is the source of our anger? Because the religious leaders are angry as well, but they're angry over self-serving reasons. They want business to continue on as usual. But Jesus, he has this, it's not a self-serving anger. He has a righteous indignation. He's angry because he wants other people to more freely connect with God. And so the heart check I want us to do is when we think of our anger, are we typically angry for self-serving reasons, or are we angry for righteous reasons? And that might sound a little abstract, but are we angry for the sake of others? Are we angry at injustice? Are we angry when we see, people not honoring God? Or are we angry purely for selfish reasons because of how someone has treated us, or because we're upset with the current circumstances in our life? But even more, as we think about this whole idea that of what Jesus was angry at, he was angry because he wanted people to connect with God. And so each day, one thing we also want to be doing is we want to give you a spiritual practice to be, preparing yourself for celebrating Easter on this upcoming Sunday. And so the spiritual practice we want to give you today is thinking about how you can continue to develop your praise and your gratitude. Because again, Jesus' anger was all about wanting to provide people a space to connect with God. And he actually ultimately accomplished that on his death and resurrection on the cross. But today, as we're able to come before him and we no longer need a temple, we want to make sure that we are cultivating that sense of wonder and awe and worship in our own hearts. And so our exercise for today is to just take a few minutes and write down maybe 5 to 10 things that you are grateful for. As we are in the season of this coronavirus, it can be really easy to just get caught up in the news. We've all had that deep dive where we've gone down the news and it's hard to even come out of. But it can easy to get caught up in negativity. And so today we're challenging you to just take a moment and write down 5 to 10 things that you are grateful for. 5 to 10 ways that God is uniquely blessing you during the season or in your life. And then to take those 10 things and to take them to God and use them as a source of prayer. Take a few minutes, take 5 minutes or so, and just pray to God and thank him for what he has done, maybe through Jesus, what he is doing in your life now, and just thank him for his provision and his goodness in your life. Because as we, get caught up in what God is doing, he essentially just raises our vision to not just what is happening in our lives, to the great work he is doing throughout human history and in this moment, far beyond just our own unique lives. And as we have this greater perspective of God, we essentially, our hearts are truly at a place where we can worship and we're grateful for all that God has done. And so as you do that as well, I'd recommend, taking those and praying to God, or even using something like Psalm 34 as another way to read and pray through, and another model of a beautiful praise to God. So I'm going to let you go with that today. Again, each day we're going to be, hope you continue to join us, because we're going to be following along Jesus each day throughout Holy Week, and there's a lot more good things coming out, but know that we love you, and we hope that you are finding true satisfaction in Jesus. Have a great day, guys.